Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. It's all about survival mode, right? A lot of us are in survival mode each and every day. We're talking complex PTSD, co-parenting, path to compassion, and so much more with our expert and our coach and dear friend, Diana Bejasa, joining us today live from Honolulu, Hawaii. How are you?
I feel like I have a whole new level of power, and that's why I wanted to share this episode today. Because I just have this sense that like I need to share what has been going on. I know I didn't get to see you last week, and I feel like a new person.
Tell me what's going on. We were on vacation in Mexico. Tell me what's going on.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time in Mexico.
Thank you.
Well, what happened, so this most recent week, I had my second co-parenting counseling session with my ex-husband, and it was really interesting because I could tell halfway through, I was like, wow, like I have this completely different power in my voice. Like I feel so much more clear and able to articulate myself, and like it was like I was finally feeling more like my real self again.
Aww.
And it didn't just like happen out of nowhere. So I want to talk about like how I got there, what happened in the past few weeks, and like how I kind of walked through it in a way that it left me feeling empowered instead of like I was powerless.
I'm waiting for the punchline.
Okay.
What happened?
Okay, so I noticed like probably like around this time last week, I was waking up in the middle of the night every single time that Ollie was nursing in the middle of the night. So it'd be like 2, 3 a.m. I would wake up and I noticed that I had this like repeated tension in my neck, and like my jaw was clenching. You know, I was waking up, my mind was racing. I just had like a hard time sleeping. And I was like, this is like not a normal experience for me. And what I've learned from having chronic illness, autoimmune disease, all these different things was when my body is reacting this way, I got to look deeper into like, what's been stressing me out? So I asked myself that question, like, what's been going on, right? This isn't just stress, you know. Yeah, I'm a single mom. Yeah, I'm a business owner. Yes, it's normal to be a little wound up, but like the pattern for me was what was concerning. And that's like, I think one of the first key things here is like, if you're starting to notice a pattern for yourself, whether you're noticing a pattern of sleepless nights, pain in your jaw, pain in your neck, pain in your back, like, you know, constantly having to go to the doctor. Like, I don't know what the pattern might be for you. Maybe it's canker sores, who knows, right? But everybody might notice like, there is some kind of pattern that's going on here. We just want to pay attention to that. So that was the first thing that I did was I paid attention to this pattern of waking up, of feeling this neck tension. And I asked myself, like, okay, what has been stressing me out lately? So when we have that pattern come up, like ask ourselves that question, right? Ask yourself that question. And what I realized was that it had all kind of started after my first co-parenting counseling session with my ex, just, 2 Wednesdays ago. So like right after we had met. And what I noticed was that in it, like we were talking about some points of difference that we have when it comes to overnights for my daughter. She's still nursing, so that's a concern for me. Like, I'm weaning her and helping her feel safe in that process of having more overnights. And I expressed that concern, but it kind of felt like after I talked about it, it was almost like a blur. Like I remember then just getting to this place where we were talking about logistics for like the first date that she was going to have an overnight. And like, I'm just like picking dates in my calendar that work. And like, just like after the session, right? Like it wasn't like anything major had happened, but I was like, what just happened? Like, I don't actually agree to any of that. Like, I'm not okay with this, but like, it was as if I like clammed up and I couldn't talk. And I like, was not acting like my normal self. Right. And so I noticed that stressor, right? Like something was going on. And I realized, as I was sitting up at 3 a.m. one day, right? I realized, like this was one of the first times, this was actually the very first time I'd had to interact with my ex for so long since he moved out while I was pregnant. And I was like, like what's going on here, right? And I've been through like a lot of different forms of trauma before. We've talked about it, Jill, 9/11, surviving that, being in an emergency plane landing, during my pregnancy, healing from betrayal, processing the shock of a sudden divorce, figuring out how to be a single mom, like suicidal ideations. We've talked about all these different things in past podcast episodes. If you're curious about that, you can check out our past episodes as well. And I was like, I had always thought that whenever those things happened, right, I had no choice but to keep going. And a lot of the ways that I'd survived, even with like a deadly peanut allergy as a child, like having multiple instances of near-death experiences, what I learned as a kid to help me survive, especially around these like deadly peanut allergy attacks, was to suppress the stress and the fear that I was feeling. Because when I do that, I'm able to survive that moment. I'm able to get through it, because those emotions of like stress and fear, they only worsen the allergic reaction. They only worsen what's going on. So I actually learned from being like a little kid to suppress that, to not feel that, to perform strength, right? And to perform calm when inside, like it feels like my body is just like shutting down and like, again, in a state of threat. And so this for me was kind of what's the word, like almost like natural. Like I get to this place, I call it my cold place, like where I just go cold inside. Like I don't feel anything, I don't allow myself to feel anything, and it's so easy and natural for me. But I noticed, right? Like I was like, yeah, like, I was like, again, in my cold place during the co-parenting session, where I was just going through the motions and the logistics and like agreeing to things that I don't actually agree with. And I started to explore these experiences more with my personal therapist. So we have a co-parenting counselor, but I'm doing personal parallel therapy because I have stuff that I want to heal through. And as I was telling her about what happened during the session, she was like, that sounds like dissociation. And we were kind of surprised looking through it, but like uncovering it, because I wasn't having like the like classic signs of dissociation. It's not like I was not responsive. My mind went blank, but I was still able to function. I was engaged, I was articulate. But what we realized through that is that I don't just like dissociate like some normal people do. I tend to be able to function highly in that dissociation, right? And there's a lot of research that indicates like individuals with complex PTSD, they often have those dissociative symptoms. And oftentimes a lot of people with CPTSD, they actually score higher in terms of dissociation measures rather than people without. And it's really different, because I had obviously realized like, okay, I have forms of PTSD because I've been through traumatic experiences, but I didn't ever really think about how those smaller traumas, like going to the hospital anytime, like food basically was almost like a threat, right? Like I didn't know if it was safe. So there were lots of ways that my body learned to cope with that, right? And that I learned to cope with that. And kind of did it without even thinking that it was anything abnormal, like to the point where like sometimes people will mention to me, like even as an adult, I've noticed, they'll be like, oh yeah, like I was in the emergency room this weekend, right? And now consciously, I know that that's like a oh my gosh, like what happened to you? Like, are you okay? Type of thing. But going to the emergency room was like a normal experience for me as a child. So like one of the very first times a friend brought this up to me, I was like, okay. Like that's like as if that was normal. And what I've realized is that it's obviously not normal, and that there are lots of ways, whether it's big T trauma, like massive things, like PTSD doesn't always come up at, that traditionally looks like flashbacks or like a singular event that happened. complex PTSD, what I've learned is it's more like this feeling of like something's wrong with me, right? Like there's a way that those traumas actually affect the brain structure and the way that our brain functions, and it can actually alter different areas of the brain. And I'm no form of like expert on this, but just in my research, I learned about how it impacts the amygdala, how it impacts our prefrontal cortex, like our cortex, our ability to make decisions, right? To regulate our emotions, to analyze, right? And so when I realized that, I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what happened in my co-parenting session. Like I was just in this place of functioning, answering questions, but I wasn't able to reason. I wasn't able to analyze or to speak up. And there are even ways, and I know that this is true for me, like where that trauma, like the way that affects me, it affects my memory. Like I mentioned before, like not having a lot of memory of what happened on 9/11. So like there are all sorts of different things that can happen when we have complex PTSD. And I realized like, oh my God, like it's not that yes, I'm able to function in this way, like I'm high functioning, but this is exactly why I'm able to do all these different things. But I'm finding that in other areas, it's so hard for me to do like basic tasks, right? And I was beating myself up. I was feeling like, why can't I do this? Like, what's wrong with me? I've worked on Wall Street. I've done all these different things. And like these basic, simple tasks are so hard. And I was like beating myself up. I was having a really hard time. But this realization of, oh my gosh, like complex PTSD is part of what I'm experiencing. It was like life-changing for me because I realized, that the brain, right? We have this neuroplasticity, this ability to reorganize and to form new neural connections. And when we are mindful, right, when we have therapies that are trauma focused, we can actually rewire the brain. So yes, our brain can be wired by trauma, but we can actually rewire it if we begin to interrupt that pattern. And so that was exactly what happened in my second session. I had reached out to the counselor literally about a week ago, and I was like, hey, like I noticed I dissociated. I'm high functioning, so it's really easy, I think, to miss it. And I didn't realize this until I was talking to my therapist, right? And like I was like, we need to slow down this conversation because it's like, I don't think my concerns are being heard here. So like, for the listener, right? Like,
yeah,
if you ever notice any of these kind of experiences,
triggers,
of, like not like yourself, right? Or like noticing that you're triggered or noticing that like something is off, like do the work to explore it, right? Whether you do it with another person, whether you do it alone, like, like look for, if you're noticing like you logically know something, but on another level, like you know how to do something, but like somehow something is not matching up. Like look into deeper what is going on, rather than just keep blaming yourself and thinking that something is wrong with you, or like you don't have the discipline, or you don't have the willpower, or whatever that looks like. Consider like what else could be going on behind the scenes. And because for me, this has been game changing. So in that second session, as soon as my ex joined it was a Zoom call, I could instantly now, because I had this awareness, I could feel my throat closing up, right? I could feel, it was almost like there was like a hand on my throat, like tightening. It felt like it was hard to breathe, right? Like I could feel like the tightness in my chest. And rather than what I realized I would do so easily before, like slipping into dissociation, where like I would just not even notice any of that stuff. I actually, in that session, I named it. I was like, I feel my throat closing up. I feel my chest tightening. I feel my breath shortening, that it's hard for me to breathe right now. And I didn't realize what a big deal that was going to make for me to actually notice and feel what was going on. Because in the rest of that session, when we were talking about my daughter and moving to overnights, I was finally able to express myself clearly. Like I said, it felt like my voice came back, right? Like instead of feeling choked, like I couldn't breathe, it felt like I had the mental clarity and also the strength of voice to express myself and to express my concerns for my daughter. And it was like the most powerful thing. I think that like ever since then, like every time I speak, I feel like it has like a completely different power or like tone to it, like a strength to it that I didn't have just like 2 weeks ago. And so I'm sharing this because, if you've ever walked through something big and you had grace on the outside and you were praised for seeming calm or so grounded or like so together, but you knew that like that wasn't a normal experience, like you're not broken, you're not weak, and you're definitely not alone, right? You may just be brilliant at surviving. You may be just brilliant at like figuring out how to function to like survive in that moment. And maybe whatever's going on in your life right now is actually calling you to thrive, right? To return to your breath, to return to your body, to return to your truth. And maybe you don't do it all perfectly at once, right? Maybe it's simply just that one choice at a time. But I'll tell you that naming how I was feeling in that moment, being more in tune with like the physical feelings, but also my emotional feelings, it's been like, it's been changing everything for me. Um, and I like, so a couple of nights later, I woke up in the middle of the night again. And this time it was like more in normal time. Like I normally wake up like around 5. Um, and when I woke up, I heard this like, instead of like hearing all the voices in my head, like worrying about like all the things that go on in life, I heard this like really calm, clear voice that was like, the obstacle is the way. And for me, it was so powerful, Jill, because I was like, instead of fighting myself, instead of fighting what's going on inside me, I can look at it and say, okay, this is my path forward. Knowing that I have complex PTSD, knowing that I have these issues that I've vetted with my therapist again, like I said. What's been able to happen for me is I'm able to say, okay, instead of expecting this other version of myself who was high performance when I was basically dissociating, I can work with this person who's feeling, who's in touch with how I really feel and what I really think. And I can say to myself, like, all right, instead of hosting tons and tons of workshops where I'm calling in lots and lots of people and charging less, let me arrange retreats where the experience is more private and I can charge more, where I can work with clients on a higher end and work with fewer clients to honor how much rest and repair I need and how much time I want to spend with my daughter. And at the same time, be able to serve on a higher level. So I'm not looking at this as something that's closing me off or something that's disabling me and stopping me from being who I want to be. I'm looking at this as something that I can say, all right, these are the constraints. Instead of expecting myself to be normal, and instead of expecting myself to be like everybody else, let me work with my unique challenges in a way that helps me. So it's like I've realized, like in this journey of figuring out how to better advocate for my daughter, it's like I've learned also how to better advocate for myself. And that has been like just the most life-changing, like profound experience. Like, and I just wanted to share that because I know that you listening, right? Like you may find this place where things don't seem to add up, right? Like you know what you need to be doing and somehow it's difficult, something's not going right. Instead of beating yourself up, which you've done and been doing for a long time and obviously isn't working, what if you could listen to what's going on with you? What if you could be more compassionate with yourself instead of beating yourself up for not being like everybody else or not doing what you know you once could do? What if you met yourself where you are today and gave yourself compassion and gave yourself kindness and worked with you, the real you, where you are today, and stop expecting yourself to be somebody else embracing who you are, your obstacles, knowing that they are ultimately going to be your way forward.
Wow. That's a lot, but this is beautiful. And I'm so proud that you're sharing all this with us. Diana, what a breakthrough. It's been 2 weeks and so much has changed for you. So positive. And so I, I'm speechless. I mean, congrats on this breakthrough with everything and how it has changed you. And your story will only change more people. Wow, I could just see it on your face when I logged in today to see her, as I always do. There was a different brightness to her, a different face, and I knew it was going to be a good conversation because I read what we were talking about, but I didn't know it was going to be this good. Wow.
I just like I wanted to share that experience because it's going to be different for everybody, but I've found that it's just so profound. Like this like realization, right? Like I was looking at co-parenting counseling. I'd been bracing myself for it and not knowing how the conversations were going to go, feeling traumatized in the middle of it, and then turning that trauma and that trigger into triumph. Like it just feels so different. And I know that like when we name our triggers, when we realize like, hey, something's not all right, and we speak up for ourselves, when we tell other people about what's going on and we don't assign shame or blame or any of that stuff, like it is life changing, and we deserve that for ourselves. And so, yeah, again, as you're listening, like just imagine what could be possible for you if you just took a couple small steps towards advocating for yourself, towards giving yourself more compassion, towards like being the kind of person that you really want to be. Because for me, like that presence, it just led to a completely different level of power.
Amazing. Whoa, I don't know what to say. It's very odd that I don't know what to say, but this is so powerful. This is so beautiful. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been like a short journey, and I'm just hoping that like because this is also for me the product of so many years of work, that maybe just this conversation can open up something for somebody or speed up their process towards self-realization and self-awareness. Because yeah, hopefully you don't have to go through all the stuff that I went through to get there, and that this can be like a little bit of a shortcut.
Beautiful. Wow. All right. So what's our takeaway from this? There's a lot, but we still got 5 more minutes, Diana.
Oh, okay. So I guess if I were to break this down, what I would say is the first thing is like noticing what's off, noticing what's wrong, right? A lot of times I think in traditional personal development, we're kind of taught like positive vibes only, like don't give up, keep going, all these different things. And I think that works to a degree. Like it's absolutely an important skill to have. But we have to look at, when does this become dissociation? When does it become like completely disregarding how we feel? And we don't let our feelings dictate everything, but at the same time, it is important for us to tune in to what's really going on inside. So that was like the first thing I did, right? Was like noticing my
Yeah.
neck, noticing the
Mhm.
that I was struggling to sleep, right? And then I think it's like start to look at patterns, right? Maybe explore with a therapist, maybe explore with a coach, right? There are coaching consultations that you can do with me as well. You can find them on my website, savorlifewithdiana.com. That's SAVOR lifewithdiana.com. You can apply for a consult there. Have a conversation to kind of unpack where you're at and how it relates to where you've been, right? Like I had never considered that some of the experiences I had, like the near-death experiences. And if I know now, it's so crazy because like I had a deadly peanut allergy before it was common. Now there are a lot of kids who have deadly peanut allergies.
Mm.
And so like in some ways I feel like I get to um, share like an adult perspective of what that could look like too. Because yeah, you survive in the moment, yeah, you're fine, but that fear is real. That
Sure is.
that um that lack of control, that desire to control are all real, and they can show up later in life in ways that you don't expect. So looking back into our patterns, right? Looking back into what could have been the stressor, what could have been the trigger for us. And then really looking to understand ourselves with greater compassion. So saying, like looking to understand and not treating a diagnosis like something that controls us, right? Like this diagnosis for me, CPTSD, it's not something that means that I can't do things, right? It's not something that I'm going to say like, oh, like now I'm disabled, I can't do anything. Instead, it's this opportunity for me to say, okay, these are my realities, these are my constraints, these are my obstacles. How do I make my way through them and honor who I am instead of beating myself up for not being who I think I should be?
Wow. Well, thank you so much, because I've learned a lot. And we should not be so hard on ourselves. My goodness, I know. Let's just all be thankful, be grateful for those celebrating Easter, Passover, all the above. I know it's been a holy week and a special week for so many, and hard week as well for those if you're missing someone and losing someone. But it's also that time of renewal and that spirit and energy which you have in you, right? God has risen, Jesus is risen, I should say. And it's just like spring is here in the air, time to move on, time to do the things that make you happy. And it's okay to not be perfect and to have ailments and but it's amazing just to start sensing those things now, because this is the time and you are energized. You're like an Energizer bunny, a spring bunny that was born today. Thank you so much, Diana Bejasa. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And with that, right, like this is a season of rebirth. So what if instead of focusing on what's died, instead of focusing on what's gone, we focused on what could rise, what could be new, what could be better in this next season, right? There's so much new life literally happening around us right now. Let's embrace that. Like because we got today. We woke up today and not everybody got that gift.
God bless.
So, let's use that gift. Let's maximize it. Let's honor it by growing, by becoming more, by giving ourselves some grace as we grow.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Diana. If we want to reach out to you, savorlifewithdiana.com. How else can we reach you?
Yeah, so you can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Diana Bejasa Speaks. That's DianaBejasa Speaks. And like I said, you can also apply for a free consultation on my website, savorlifewithdiana.com. That's SAVOR lifewithdiana.com.
The rebirth of life. Here we are. Good for you. Enjoy the rest of the week. God bless your little one. And I love this new positivity. If she wasn't as amazing already, she's got this extra glow, extra energy, really, and desire and knowing of how to help you experience the same and transform and get moving on where you should be in this life. Thank you, Diana. Have a fantastic day, okay?
Thanks, Jill. I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye, hon.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her.
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.